All right. Welcome back to Beat the Count. We're here live at Sweet Science Boxing and MMA in Hawthorne, California. And I have with me to my right, returning for his third, right? This is your third episode.
Third time, yes.
You're a regular. I think that gets you promoted.
Right?
Yeah. Luis Mejia, whose photography is featured in ESPN and many other publications you guys have very likely seen, particularly for the fights here in Southern California. Many stunning images of Luis.
Thank you.
You can follow him at El Mejia Photography, right?
Yes, sir.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be with you. And to my left, we have the GBO Continental Champion, undefeated prospect, Adelaida, Delilah, La Cobra, Ruiz. I think I got all the names in there.
No, you did. Thank you.
Did I get them all?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. How are you doing?
Good.
I know that you have a very busy schedule, and so I really appreciate your making the time to come out here and sit with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Because aside from being an undefeated phenomenon here in Southern California, you're also a mother.
Yes.
Of three? A mother of three. And you work full-time.
I do work full-time.
You work full-time. Man, what is that training schedule like? How do you fit that all in there?
It's hard, but I get it in there somehow, some way.
It's called passion.
It's called passion?
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to take it back just a little bit to you have been boxing since you were 12 or so. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I started at 12 years old.
So you went there's a period from 12 to 18 where you boxed as an amateur.
Yes,
is that
correct.
true?
That's
okay. And then you took some years off before returning to professional boxing.
That's correct.
Okay. What would you say created that separation from you in the sport initially to go and take those years off from the sport? And then how did you find boxing again later on in life?
The thing is, I stopped boxing because I had my first child, and I did return back to the gym. I did go to nationals, but having children, they also need all your time. So it was my kids. I just wanted to be there for them the most I can. I'm there for them now, but I feel the first 5 years of a kid's life, they need you there. You're like their first teacher.
Great. So you took that time off. In that period of time, you had all three children?
3, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how old is your oldest now?
The oldest is 12.
He's 12, and the youngest?
The youngest is 9.
And he's here with us today?
Yes, he's here with us today.
All right. I have a 4-year-old, so I've got some years to catch up to you still. So in the meantime, though, you found boxing again.
I did, because I always had it in me that I was going to go back. I was going to come back and finish what I didn't finish. And, I had a dream that I was going to turn professional and one day, be a world champion. So I didn't want to be 50, 60 years old saying should have, could have, would have. I boxed before. I hear it all the time. Oh, I used to box back then. But yet, there's nothing to go back on. So I wanted to show my grandkids, my nephews, like, yes, I boxed, look.
And I know that you very recently got involved with Combat Sports Collective to do things like strength and conditioning, as well as all the services that the Combat Sports Collective. What made you seek out, and I heard you say also that you used a nutritionist and things like that for the first time recently. So You've been boxing all this time, but now you do strength and conditioning with Andy Aguilar, who's like a scientist of fitness,
really?
In a way.
I know,
that's
what
how
I
he
told
strikes
them.
me. I don't know.
Very decorated.
I actually told him that on Tuesday when I seen him.
Oh, did you really?
I was telling him, you're just different. You're different than any other coach. I see other strength and conditioning classes, and yours is different. It's hard to explain. He's like a science master.
So he's like a scientist of strength and conditioning. So you do strength and conditioning, you do nutrition, which are relatively new in terms of your regime, or at least having someone who specializes in those areas.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
What made you change and say, you know what, I think for this camp, we're going to go and look for something different? And then how did you find the Combat Sports Collective?
The opportunity came to me. I was offered a sponsorship through them to try it out and see if I liked it. And I loved
Oh, was
it.
that you? Okay.
Those are
You're
actually-
confusing me. I was hearing myself in my headphones and got totally confused for a
No,
second.
and I loved
apologize.
it. And it was through Luis and Roxy that, I seen it in Roxy first. She started, Roxy?
Yes, actually, Roxy,
Yeah.
Right Hook Roxy.
Yeah, Right Hook
Ayana
Roxy.
Verduzco has been a guest on our show.
Yeah, so
Shout out to Ayana.
I seen her doing it, I seen the difference because, I spar with her, and I even told her mom, like, I see the difference. So, that's how it all started.
So you can feel the difference.
I felt the difference with her from when I used to spar her to the time after her camp with Combat Sports with
And
Andy.
I know that when recently you were on the Against the Ropes podcast.
Yes.
And one of the things that you mentioned is you're still not necessarily La Cobra of old, or there's still more that you
Yes.
feel like you could be doing.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Is it things that you could be doing better in terms of conditioning, in terms of craft, or where is it that you want to see kind of that immediate growth?
I think the conditioning is there already. Is just I feel that I'm still a little bit rusty compared to the old. I mean, I was young back then, but I know I'm getting there little by little. It's just certain punches that I just want to
They don't land quite the way that you expect them to land?
Yes, exactly.
Or quite the way that you remember perhaps when you were
Yes.
younger?
Yes, but they're getting there.
That's everything that I do now. I'm like, this doesn't work quite the way that it did when I was a young man.
No, but it's getting there. It's getting there. That left body punch to I'm working on it, and I'm gonna continue working on it, and it's gonna get there.
And see, and the other thing is the good thing about the combat sports training is Andy's constantly evolving. So as her training keeps going, every single camp's going to be different. So every other camp after this one, there's going to be changes made, because obviously also Andy's going to talk to her, talk to the coach, say, hey, what do you guys want to pull out? Do you guys want more power? You want more speed? Things of that nature, and the training is going to change.
Yeah, and that makes sense because in a sense it has to be individualized.
Yes.
Right? Each person has to work on something different, and the things that you want to work on for your next camp aren't necessarily the same as what you want to work on for your previous fights or whatever the case is. So you're feeling now that individualization, or you're targeting specific areas to improve fight over fight.
Yes, I am.
And you have a fight coming up on October 12th.
Yes.
Correct? And do you know who your opponent is yet?
Not yet. We have a few prospects that are open, so we just, they're still working on it, but there's a few prospects.
And that is a Red Boxing promotion, so that fight will take place at the Pico Rivera Sports Arena.
Yes.
And in terms of finding a prospect, something that we've heard kind of a recurring theme with the women who are fighters that have been on this show is sometimes there's a challenge perhaps to find sparring or to find opponents at a quality level. Do you feel that challenge as well? Do you feel like it's difficult to get good sparring for a woman? Is it difficult to find a good opponent for a woman?
Yes. My sparring is always really hard. That's why I tend to keep my same sparring partners, because if I try to look for new sparring partners, I spar with them once and then I won't hear from them again. That's what happens. Or they'll be like, we'll see you
Maybe
next
you're putting
Wednesday.
it on them too hard a little bit.
Yeah,
I beat them one time and then they don't want to come back.
And I won't, I won't hear from them again. So I tend to keep the same ones, and it's just hard to find sparring.
Especially because she's evolving. So just imagine, she was already La Cobra before she even came. So now I see it. I've seen it. I've seen her spar, and it's a big difference, So I can imagine that, the women that they're not even at her level, or even at her level, but just she's at like a different, power speed level now, where I see where they won't come back.
Does that extend to opponents or opposition when you're trying to find someone to fight, for instance, on October 12th? Is it that same kind of difficulty?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess Eddie's got his hands cut out for him, but he'll figure it out, right?
It's
Eddie
hard.
Rodriguez, right? But so let me ask you this. So you took a substantial period off there for good reason. Obviously, you had the children. You were raising your children. Now you've returned. Do you see any difference or discrepancy in the field of women's boxing from when you left to when you came back? Do you feel like it's any different than it was before?
Oh, yes.
And how is it different?
Well, I see that now we're getting a bit more attention. I mean, we're on TV. You see, women boxing on TV now in Showtime, ESPN. You see it out there. Before, you wouldn't. It was all undercard, and you wouldn't see it as much out here like in Mexico or other countries. So I think we're getting a spot here in the USA.
You're seeing more high profile than action take
before.
Place here in the
so
USA.
I always, like, when I tell people my story, that I stopped back then and I returned, I feel that it was all God's plan. Like if I would have stayed boxing back then, maybe I would have became a world champion and no one really would have known me. It would have not been like now, like I'm out here.
Let me ask you, I watched an interview that you did with the Boxing Rundown that was over a year ago at this point, and they asked what your ambition was in the sport of boxing. And I'll paraphrase it, but the answer was to be known as the best in women's boxing.
Yes.
The best that there ever was in women's boxing. So can I ask you, which is obviously I think probably the ambition for a lot of young and talented fighters who are coming up. They want to be the best, right?
Right.
Of course. Can I ask you, who do you think owns that spot now? So who are you chasing in order to be recognized as the best women's boxer?
Right now, I see Clarissa Shields.
Like all-time best, Clarissa
Yes.
Shields?
I give her much respect. I mean, I feel I see it. She is not just getting any fighter. She'll say, I'll fight you, and she's fighting all top female boxers out there.
She is. One thing I will say on that, Clarissa Shields, the other thing that I love is that she jumps promotional boundaries so frequently. Like, you'll see within a given year, she's like fighting on Showtime and then like fighting over here and fighting over there to make the quality fights or the fights with the best opponents that she can make. It's a really distinct challenge that we have in boxing now. And so to see someone who is so willing to kind of go, no, I'm just going to be independent, right? I'm just going to fly and go here and there. I think that's important for making quality fights.
Yes.
So Clarissa Shields owns that spot, and you're chasing Clarissa Shields then.
Yes.
In this instance. And she's still building that resume.
Oh, yes, she is.
She's
and
still
I give
building
her
that
so much
resume.
respect.
So let me ask you this. What is the difference between Adelaida then, or Delilah, excuse me, and now?
From a year ago when I had that.
Well, no, I'm sorry, not a year ago, but from your amateur days where you took that time off, and I know that we've talked about some of the physical differences. You're still returning to some of that peak physical condition, but do you have any advantages now, for instance, that you didn't have then? Is there more knowledge, I guess, of the sport or something that's being...
Yes. I mean, yes. So strength and conditioning is one of them. My discipline, I wasn't disciplined back then. So when I was 17, 16, I was fighting at 125 pounds. So I was eating all the junk you could imagine and just, fighting. I was always overweight whatsoever. Now, my body's transforming into an athlete's body, and everybody could tell.
Yeah. So
and I think that's...
everyone can see the difference in
yes,
that.
everybody could see the difference in my body. And the nutritionist.
And the nutrition.
Yes.
What's that like? What's a typical meal like with the nutritionist?
I love it. I mean, everything is different, but I mean, because I was trying to do it on my own about a year ago. Okay. And I cut off all carbs, and I was just eating basic, like kind of keto, but not as fat.
Okay.
Not all that bacon. I was basically doing like chicken, fish, and just not the carbs and not the red meat. And yes, I lost a lot of weight, but I wasn't healthy. Like I don't know. I didn't feel as strong as I do now. I'm eating my carbs. I'm eating my red meat when I have to. So his food is delicious.
Yeah, it's challenging, no doubt, because I know nothing about nutrition. I'm not gonna lie. I'm terrible with nutrition. I went and lost a bunch of weight. I did it completely the wrong way. I found out later. I've talked about it on here before. I won't go into detail with it again. But there's so much to nutrition, and I think to be in a position where you can have someone providing that knowledge to you, I don't know that most people actually understand like sort of the intricacies of nutrition, and I imagine that many fighters don't have the luxury or the benefit of being able to say, okay, I'm going to have someone who focuses on my nutrition. A lot of fighters don't have strength and conditioning. I think these are great things for fighters to have, and they're great advantages going into the ring. Like, every time I feel like, you know, a fighter like you going into the ring, having the support of a nutritionist and having the background of someone like Andy, for instance, compared to someone who didn't have those benefits, there's got to be a distinct advantage in that. There just has to be.
And it's less stressful, you know.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I thank God for that.
And you know what's funny is, like, the way she trains, like, it seems like she's not doing a lot, right?
Yeah.
But trust me, like, she's sweating, she's tired, like, you know what I mean? They're just very functional
Exercises,
I guess, like, movements and exercises.
And you know, it's funny
I mean?
because, like I said, I was just talking to Andy about that. I'm like, it looks like it's so easy. You know, you put it up.
when you watch the video?
Yes, when you're watching the video, you're like, what in the world is she doing? But the next day and the second day, you're like, I'm sore. And it's like, we were just doing,
You're like,
you know,
I didn't even know I was doing anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's...
I will say, I catch some of the Instagram live videos that you guys share on doing the training, not just with you, but with a number of other people, including Ayana and others. And there are some exercises that take place that I didn't even know were exercises.
Right.
I'm like, what? I didn't know that was a thing, that people actually do that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, people don't, you know, a lot of people don't understand that you can go the traditional route. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, people have been doing it for years. But when you start doing it this way, not only do you get more out of it, but you also reduce injury, because you're using different movements. You're using your body's full capability, and people don't understand that. You know, the traditional coaches will be like, no, I don't like that shit. I don't like that shit, you know. Yeah. But when you start explaining them to the dynamic to it, then they're like, oh, that's right. You know what I'm saying? So you eliminate, you try to eliminate the possibility of injury as much as you can, and that's what Andy does.
Yeah, and I think recovery is a big part of it too. That's like something that I feel is undervalued in boxing. The idea that the body actually needs time to recover in between these intense sessions that you guys do.
Yeah.
That, and then the people think that, just run 10 more minutes, 5 more miles, or do more stairs. They think that by doing that they're going to get more out of it, but you're just exerting the body. And you're not actually building anything. You're actually killing it. You're losing that endurance. It's like redlining a car. The closer you get to the red line, the more power you start losing.
Yeah, I actually think that I watched recently a really good. I'm going to give a free shout out here. So to Boxercise. If you guys don't follow Boxercise on YouTube, he does a lot of boxing tutorials. They're very short. They're like a minute and a half. But one of the things he talked about recently is how you can sort of redline your body in that way, and that you're not always doing things, particularly in, I think he was referencing sprinting on a treadmill and how that can be bad for you and why you shouldn't sprint on a treadmill compared to other places. So yeah, I'm there. I'm with you.
And I agree too. And I felt it on my last camp.
You felt it?
Yeah, because for my last camp, I changed coaches. So this last camp, I changed coach, so my coach now is my dad, and I started doing the strength and conditioning. And my previous coach will have different exercises for me to do, but I think that's what was happening to my body. It was
declining. Yeah,
I was doing much more, but it was, it wasn't helping me, and that would frustrate me. Why I'm doing so much? I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and why is it not help? So now I understand, like he said, and I see it, and I felt it.
Yeah, to some extent, you have to feel the benefit in that way, because the challenge is if you are in boxing and you go from coach to coach or gym to gym, you're going to get different advice from every single person that you encounter. Yes. Like, this is my experience, and you guys can tell me if you feel differently, but I feel like no two boxing coaches can agree on any technique that you're supposed to perform, on any way that you're supposed to train, on just very simple and basic things. Any gym and any coach at that gym, generally speaking, has their own philosophy on the right way to train. And it's like passed down from generation to generation. It's like how their coach taught them or how their dad taught them or whatever the case is. And so a lot of times these fighters, it's going to be challenging to know the difference. The only way that you really know is you feel it in your body, right?
And that's exactly what I told her.
Yeah, it's the only way you know.
Don't take my word for it. I said, come to camp. I go, try it out. If you don't like it, you don't have to come back.
Exactly.
You know? And she felt it.
And I felt it.
Couple things real quick. You got a shout out from John Michael, Combat Cutman. What's up, John Michael?
Hey, John.
He says he wants to carry the belt to the ring, and he'll see you at the weigh-ins. Shout out also to Steve Oliveros and Sun Hakim. Thanks for joining in, you guys. I appreciate having you. We're here with La Cobra, Ruiz, and Luis Mejia. We're talking about training and fitness. Spending a lot of time talking about training and fitness. So, in terms of training, do you train early in the morning or do you train late?
I run in the mornings before work, and then training. So I train in the evenings.
So what typically, when does your day start? What time?
At 4.
At 4 in the morning?
Yes.
So from 4 in the morning until the end of training is
9:30.
9:30. I think that
10 now.
Yeah. This kind of hits on the thing that you talked about earlier, the dedication that you have now that perhaps you didn't have
Before.
as a young you have to.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly disciplined lifestyle to have to live.
Yeah.
But it's paying off. You have an undefeated professional record. You have a GBO Continental title. Let's talk about the title. So how did this come into play?
It's funny because my last fight, I didn't know I was fighting for the GBO.
Oh, really?
I found out when we were at the
until they strapped it on you, or like
the first conference that we had.
Oh, okay.
And they said it, and somebody told me that they could see it in my face that I was surprised and happy, like, oh my God, I'm fighting for a title, But yeah, I love it.
Lupe Gutierrez said, "Hey, La Cobra, and Beat the Count. Great interview. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All credit to the guests up here. I'm just here. They make the show.
You are the show. Cut it out.
I'll take it. I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
So you find out that you're fighting for a GBO title. Does this create any additional pressure, anxiety? Did it change sort of your outlook on this fight in particular?
It did. I knew that fighting that fight, I had to. It was the fight that was gonna either
make or break you.
Yes, exactly. Break me or
make me.
Yeah, this was it, And I was fighting with. I already knew the girl that I was gonna fight with was gonna be a tough girl. I seen her fight with this other Japanese fighter, and I knew it was, but it kind of pushed me to, have a positive mind and just continue working harder. And
in fact, she wasn't really intended to be your opponent, right? Wasn't it like the Japanese fighter who she had fought originally was planned?
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of upset, I guess, a different fighter and got the opportunity to fight for the GBO with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you came out with it. And did you receive the title that evening?
Yes, I did.
You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Comes in a fancy case. She brought the case.
I did bring the case.
She brought the case.
And luckily, I took the photo.
You took the photo?
She was carrying
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. You could check that out on Luis Mejia Photography. It's El Mejia Photography on Instagram.
Or at Official Red Boxing Promotion.
Visual Red Boxing Promotion, that as well. Yeah. So you're excited, and I gather that you're intending to collect a few more of those.
A lot more.
A lot more.
At least the important ones, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
The important ones. That's all of them, man. Yeah, I mean they're all steps to the next one. You know what I mean? So is
Patiently.
there? Yeah, exactly.
Patiently waiting for my turn, but I'm here.
So when do you expect, or do you have a sort of line of sight to when you feel like you'll be ready to start to compete for other titles as well?
I'm ready.
You're ready now?
I just want the opportunity to come. So once the opportunity comes to me, I'll be ready. I'm ready.
You guys heard it. You heard it right here. She's ready for the title.
I'm ready.
Do you know who the title holders are in your weight division?
Yes.
You do? Who are they?
For the WBC is Guadalupe from Mexico. For the WBO is Amanda Serrano.
Oh, that'll be a good one. That'll be a good one.
Amanda Serrano.
And I think the WBA is I forget her name. She's from Mexico as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amanda Serrano, who is a multi-division title.
Yes,
holder.
and I give her a lot of respect for that too. I like her.
She's 7, right? 7 divisions. Is that what it was?
6,
or is that
7.
6, 7?
6.
Okay, it's a
It's
lot.
6,
yeah, it's a lot.
She's fighting next month too.
Heather
with,
Hardy, right?
Yeah,
she's got the upcoming fight with Heather Hardy. That's going to be an awesome fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be an awesome fight. Let me ask you about that. So, Heather Hardy, for instance, is a member of the boxing community who's followed a trend recently, particularly in female boxing, as a crossover sort of star. So Heather Hardy competes in MMA. She also competes in boxing, as does Holly Holm. Ava Knight just recently signed, who held a WBC belt at one point, recently signed with Bellator MMA. And a lot of that, I think, is because of the opportunities and that women receive in MMA compared to boxing. So you see kind of some of these crossover stars, people who go back and forth. Heather Hardy's one of those. Her last fight was an MMA fight.
Yes.
Now she's coming to defend her title. She's also been very vocal about the challenge of finding opponents or even promoters to promote events for Heather Hardy in boxing, in the sport of boxing. Do you see some of that, and would you ever consider competing in a sport other than boxing?
No.
No, it's
I've been
just
asked
boxing?
that question. No, I wouldn't. I love boxing. I'm actually boxing not for the money, but because I like it. You know, I like the challenge, and it's just a passion that I have
To compete in boxing.
to compete in boxing.
Good.
Yes.
I'm glad you're going to stick around. I'm glad she's going to stick around. I don't like seeing people leave the sport for. I wish the sport treated women better so that they didn't have to go to MMA and
you know
do
what?
that.
I think they do. Well, not here in the USA, but there's other countries that they do treat their women better, and they have them up here. So I think the USA is the last to actually give us that respect, and hopefully they're stepping up.
What's up, Stacks? Anthony Saldana. Love the new setup. Yeah, I do too. Look, we can actually look at each other while we talk. It's crazy.
Why? You couldn't see each other before?
It was kind of straight line-ish, let's say. Let's say it was more like we're kind of up and down the table.
Okay.
I got tired of that. I had a week off, and this is what I did with my week off. I changed the setup entirely. And next time I get a week off, I'll probably change it again, but that's okay. So, a couple things. You had mentioned wanting to get that exposure for women, right? So you were saying how it seems like, particularly in the U.S., we don't promote women's boxing as much. I'm someone who in the past, and my stance on this may be changing, but in the past I have said that one of the things that I think made women's MMA successful is that when they decided to allow women compete, it was all in. They were part of the same they receive the same sort of promotional push. The rules are the same. It's not a light version of MMA, right? It's not like MMA light is women. I think in many sports, that's the perception, particularly amongst men and even older men, which is that this is the light version of basketball, or this is the light version of something else, right? Now, I think that one of the things I've been an advocate for in the past, and I've asked every woman who's been on the show about this, is do you feel as though you should be fighting 3-minute rounds? Because that's something that I think is a difference or discrepancy. I may be changing my position on that, but I am interested to hear, do you think 3-minute rounds is something that should be implemented for women?
Yes.
Okay, so you're for 3-minute rounds.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And you don't feel like, from a conditioning standpoint, there would be any issue or anything like that for you?
No, not at all. If anything, I think it'll help us more because we're fighting and we're barely getting into the groove, and then it's like ding, 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 like dang, that's it. We sparred 3-minute rounds.
Yeah.
Why not fight?
I mean, go ahead. I'm curious.
For her fight. That's what I noticed. And I forgot that there were 2-minute rounds. and I started noticing her. She was getting into a groove towards the end of the minute. You know what I mean? And then she's in there, she's letting them go, and then all of a sudden, bing, 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 and I'm like, oh man, like she was just barely getting into it, and I'm like, oh man, if she just had one more minute, that would have been over right there.
I feel like, for instance, the outcome of a lot of fights that we've even seen recently could be different had they been fighting 3-minute rounds. So, for instance, I have no doubt that Clarissa Shields could have finished Christina Hammer if they were fighting 3-minute rounds. Mm-hmm. I think that there is a very good chance that Katie Taylor possibly doesn't finish her last fight if they were fighting 3-minute rounds. And because there was a stamina issue and she just seemed to be tiring very rapidly in a very competitive fight.
Come see us.
Yeah, so yeah. So I look,
shameless plug.
I know, exactly. But no, she could perhaps benefit from it, because you look at it and you go, wow, I think it's fortunate that didn't continue. But I know that there's also been very recent tragedies in boxing related to people sustaining damage and either being, suffering the greatest of consequences or things like that. I wanted to ask a little bit about this as well, because you explained when you were recently on Against the Ropes, you talked about a knockout that you had in your 4th fight, which was actually here in Southern California at Commerce Casino. And this particular knockout, you know the one I'm referring to. Mm-hmm. Yes. When you won, you described it as being scary. It was scary. Why was it scary?
I was scared for Brenda.
Your opponent?
My opponent, which, I mean, I love boxing. I love the sport. I know it comes with the sport, but I don't ever want to hurt my opponent in the way where I thought she was, it was scary,
It was, yeah.
It was scary.
A devastating knockout.
Yes.
For sure.
It was, and it was my first knockout as a professional. I think my other knockouts became a little bit easier for me to see, but it was just scary.
I think sometimes it comes down to the matchmaking, because I've been in the lockers, like in the back, where, you see the A and B side, and you're like, I don't even know what this person's doing here. Because, you know what I mean, it's a complete mismatch. And I get it. I get, you gotta build the records and things like that. But I think sometimes it's unfair. And, you know what I mean, at the end of the day, these are professionals, but it's, I mean, I can see where she's coming from, where, you know what I mean, she knocks somebody out and it's like, whoa, like, you know what I mean, it's at your hand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I'm going to say, I don't want to spend show after show giving sort of my opinion on tragedy, but I'm going to do exactly that right now because of this opportunity here. One of the reasons I bring this up is because something that you see often online, if you follow, for instance, social media or do anything like that, you will hear or read, I should say, comments where people say things like, for instance, they know what they're getting themselves into. They know the fighters know what they're getting themselves into. They know what they signed up for. Stop it. That's simply just not the case. It's not the case. Like, you need something, big man? Was it? No? What's up?
Sorry.
No problem.
That's chocolatito.
Yeah, no problem. I want to take a second to just say stop it. That's silly. Like, okay, do they know that there's danger? I'm sure that every person who steps in the ring understands that there's danger. There's a difference between that and saying there's this expectation that when I get in the ring today, I might die. There's like a certain amount of ego that has to exist in each fighter. So I would assert that you don't go into the ring thinking about that you'll be losing all the time, for instance, right? Like, no. And that would be bad for you as a fighter to go in the ring going, oh, I think I might lose today. I think this person's going to kick my ass a little bit, right? So I look at it and, hey, look, I know that there's risk with driving a car, but that doesn't mean that if I died in a terrible car crash on the way home, people should go, well, he knew what he was getting himself into, right? He got behind the wheel and he drove. Like, it's silly. Like, fighters know that the sport is dangerous. Yes, nobody expects to pay that price. Nobody does. Nobody expects to be crippled for life. Nobody expects to be dead at the end of their fight. Nobody expects that. The fact that I understand they're warriors, and if you give them the option, they'll continue in fights beyond points where they really need to be able to continue. But we can, that's enough of the, they know what they're getting into. That's sort of my
and I think it's one of those things where You know, you've been on the court where the guy shows up with all the gear and, you know, he thinks he's a baller, and then all of a sudden he gets balled up because he's wearing all the gear, he thinks he knows what he's doing. You know, I think some of these people, they don't realize the caliber that they're fighting. You know, I've seen it in Mexico where it's a paycheck. You know, they go in there because they're like, you know what, we couldn't find another replacement, or we couldn't find somebody to, you know, to match up with this person. And I've seen it where they're wearing like street clothes, almost
tennis
like
shoes.
Yeah, tennis shoes,
and
and then, you know what I mean, like like I think I said this last time, where the girl was wearing literally paper instead of the gel protectors for the breast.
Yeah.
And she was getting mopped, and I felt so bad. I stopped taking pictures. You know, I took a few shots, and then I'm like, you know what, this is wrong, and I just completely stopped taking photos. You know,
because to say that they know what they're getting into, it's like saying there's not more that we can do. There's more that we can do. Like, I don't have all the answers. I've said some things on this show in the past, but we can be better, right? So, like, we don't have to say, like, oh, fighters know it's dangerous. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to protect them in any way. Like, I don't know. Am I overstepping? What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. With everything you just said, I agree with you.
Yeah.
100%.
and that's not including the weight cutting. You know,
yeah,
you
absolutely.
got big fighters dropping down all this weight, and then they're losing so much water. Your brain is almost full water, like, and you're completely dehydrating your body to make weight. I've seen guys looking like they're crippled getting up on the scale. You know what I mean? It's like something needs to happen.
Yeah, so in terms of weight cutting, for instance, I found out that one fighting championship, which is apparently a popular in some regions of the world, MMA. To be fair, you probably don't know this, but I don't know anything about MMA, so everything I'm about to say might sound silly.
Okay.
I'm an avid boxing enthusiast. I don't know anything about MMA. But one fighting championship, I believe, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I get this wrong, has what they call a walking weight policy, which is that they make sure that you are fighting at your natural weight or somewhere in and around your natural weight. And the way that they do this is when they test you for drug tests and things like that, they also test you for dehydration. Yeah. So they monitor the density of your urine samples to see if you're losing water weight. And so they have a very strict weight schedule. Like within 60 days, within 2 months of the bout, you can only be over by 6%. 106% is what you can be at.
Well,
and you have to work your way down.
The WBC kind of has a certain rule like that.
Well, you can't come in the next day.
The month before you have to wait. You do your weight, and you can be a certain amount of weight above your weight.
Correct. Yeah. The WBC has a 30-day weigh-in, a 14 or 15-day weigh-in, a 7-day weigh-in, and then the normal weigh-in. But I think they start at 30 days. One fighting championship actually starts at 60 days. So an extra month. And I believe the allowance is smaller. So the allowance for the WBC, I think, is like 10% of your weight at 30 days. Whereas the allowance for one fighting championship, I believe, is you can only be 106% of the contracted weight. So it's a walking weight policy. And you guys may say, be opposed to this. So you may say, hey, that's a little bit too strict. We should be able to cut down. It truly defeats the purpose of weight classes. The whole intention is that you're fighting individuals of the same size, not that like these massive people can shed 20 pounds of water weight and fight men who are much smaller than them or women who are much smaller than them, and on that night be, popping IVs and doing things like that to be a completely massive man or woman for that matter.
Yeah, look what happened to Jacobs.
The whole point is that you're supposed to fight people of the same weight class. So it may be an advantage for you if you're sitting here thinking, oh, well, I would lose my advantage if we actually had to fight at our actual weight. Well, then maybe you're not as good as you think you are. Anyways, that's all. That's all. Too much. A couple things here. Carlos Rodriguez, saludos to La Cobra and Beat the Count from all of us at Jerry Ortiz Boxing Gym. Thank you, Carlos. Appreciate it. Shout out to Jerry Ortiz. Maria Lira said, who's the kid? She says Chocolatito.
Chocolatito. That's my son.
Oh, man. Who's the kid? Yeah. No problem. So do you watch boxing?
If I watch boxing?
Do you watch, casually, as an example?
Some fights.
Some fights.
The ones that grab my attention.
Can you give me an example of a fight that would grab your attention?
Like yesterday, I watched the Ortiz fight, and then I watched the Negrete fight. So I skipped in between.
Everything in between those?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What did you think? Well, let's talk about those real quick. Oscar Negrete. So the third fight between those two individuals, the first one ended in a draw. The second one ended in a split decision loss for Oscar Negrete. The third one, a draw. All three of them close. I'm certain that you could make a case for either opponent in that fight, meaning if you wanted to say, I think this person won, you probably could say that. Who did you think won? You don't want to say?
No.
Okay. You don't have to. You don't have to. Did you enjoy the fight?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think I watched their first? I watched their first fight live, and I mean, I just like them. I like to watch them fight. Both of them. It's just
Would you want to see it again? A fourth one?
I like Oscar.
I heard a lot of people that were saying that they don't want to watch it again.
No.
they're like, we don't want to watch it no more. Stop already.
I think it was because that fight was on DAZN. I think it was Sergio Mora who said he would like to see it again, but you have to give him an opportunity to go and get a win. Like, let him go fight someone else and remember what the experience of winning feels like, because they've been fighting each other for so long now to just continue. Like, it could do something to their morale, to continue to experience like draws and close decisions and things like that. So he wants to see him fight, but not immediately, and I can understand that. Yeah, I can understand.
Because they haven't fought nobody else but themselves.
But the only problem is if they come back with a loss, then the people
That's
really
true.
want to see it.
Yeah, that's true.
The bad part.
So, Virgil Ortiz, you watched that one as well? Okay, what did you think of that one? Good fight? Good fight. Stunning knockout. I thought that was a tremendous performance by Virgil Ortiz. And he did show some vulnerability against someone who was...
That left hand.
Yeah, right?
Kept sneaking in. Boom, boom.
He showed some vulnerability for sure, but that's also what makes fights interesting. I feel like sometimes that understanding that both people are vulnerable and have experience and things like that is kind of what keeps people engaged in a fight. If one fight over a period of 5 rounds is 5 rounds like of domination of one fighter, a lot of times the next 5 rounds aren't really that interesting or engaging. Kind of like, I could be doing something else while this fight is also running. Yeah, exactly. But I think in Virgil's case, he showed a little bit of vulnerability. It made it a really exciting fight. He had a spectacular finish, which is, I'm sure, everything that he needed to do for his career, and it was excellent.
He always has that right punch, like that right timing, that right punch, and it's just boom. Yeah. I think he's very smart.
He puts a little something extra on those, I feel. Like, you look at it and you're like, okay, yeah. Everyone says he hits hard. I kind of feel like a lot of times, one thing that is a challenge, particularly for someone like Virgil Ortiz, who hits as hard as they say he does and has all these knockouts and stuff like that, like the fact that he's still never been past 6 rounds and hasn't been challenged in that way, I think sometimes is like, you look at Teofimo Lopez, who very recently had to go a full 12 rounds in a title eliminator, and people would say he looked less than spectacular in that fight. And some of that is like, he's never had to do that before. He's never been pushed to that point. And as you step up in levels, right, a lot of people hit hard, and a lot of people could take a punch. Otherwise, they wouldn't be at that level, right? Like, if it was so easy to put that person down, then they wouldn't be there, right? If they couldn't hit hard, then they wouldn't be there. So I think that's like an interesting thing for Virgil. As he steps up, you'll experience more and more of that. Do you think about that? Do you think of like, okay, you're fighting competition, but as you go on and pursue other titles, right, the individuals that you'll be fighting are perhaps a different caliber of individual.
Yes. No, yeah, I know that. I know that it's gonna be more it's gonna be more work, and like you said, they're not there for, just because they're there. Yeah. I mean, they're there because they're good and they've paid their dues and they fought, and they're there for a reason. I mean,
and now you have something that they want. some added jewelry right there.
You're
gonna want to chase that too.
GBO. Yeah. How do you get because that's the Continental title?
Yes.
Right. How do we make you the GBO world champion here?
You're gonna go
We got to work that out.
Philippines.
You have to fight in the Philippines? I have to call someone and be like, hey,
Going to Manila.
can we get La Cobra the shot in the Philippines? Would you go fight in the Philippines?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah. I need 2 weeks though. 2 week notice to let my employer know. No, just kidding.
2 weeks. Oh, you have to go on vacation. That's right.
By then, I don't
You have
think
to
you'll
go
need
on vacation.
that.
Man, that's got to be tough. Like, did you guys see? So they made the rematch with Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua. Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I was like planning a vacation to the UK. I had told my wife, like, hey, when they make this fight in the UK, we're going to go over there and we're going to watch Andy Ruiz fight for the heavyweight title in England, because I've never seen a fight in England, but I've seen a fight with English fans, and it's tremendous, right? So I was like, I'm going to experience this. And then they came back and said Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, yeah.
I think I'll pass. I'm not going. I'll watch it on pay-per-view.
Do you know how they made that decision? Why they
both didn't want to come over here.
They both didn't want to fight in
their
their
own countries.
Apparently, so I know from the few articles that I have read that Andy Ruiz didn't really have the authority to mandate a place, because it was in the initial contract, the rematch clause in his initial contract with Anthony Joshua. So Eddie Hearn was really overseeing where this would take place, and he received a location bonus in excess of like $40 million to place the fight in Saudi Arabia. And so at the end of the day, it was just the location bonus that he was receiving was too high to put the fight anywhere else instead of O2 or Madison Square Garden or something like that.
Okay.
The challenge is now, if you're, what you read now is that, there are people who potentially maybe dispute certain elements of the contract, because that $40 million really, that's Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, and it's not something that's creates a promise or difference for Andy Ruiz, as an example. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So Andy may not see any of that because his price was negotiated before the first fight, as an example. So, we'll see. Always, you hear all this stuff about contract negotiations and things like that, like, Andy Ruiz and this contract, or other people, and like Regis Prograis very recently, who was in the World Boxing Super Series. So he pulled out of the final. He was going to be in the final of the World Boxing Super Series. He pulled out. And now they're in like arbitration over the contract and things like that. It makes me wonder, like, who's looking after the fighters in these contracts? Like, do you guys have like lawyers and stuff like that going through it, or is it like
you have to?
You have to get your own, like you have to pay your own lawyer to go and look through that. Man.
Well, I think once you get to that level, you pretty much have a team. Like your management team most likely has somebody in that, in place to take care of that, because that's money.
But even that's tough. Like if it's your management team and they're hiring your lawyer, it's kind of their lawyer. You know what I mean? Like it's not your lawyer. Like if it's your promoter and they're saying, yeah, we'll look at this contract. Well, how our lawyers look at it, that's the promoter's lawyer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's like the promoter's lawyer, the manager's lawyer, but then it seems like as an individual, you kind of have to have your own interests in mind.
Yeah.
So kind of challenging. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm just paranoid. You guys think that's it? I'm just paranoid, right?
No, I think you always got to have your own back no matter what.
No, yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, that's true.
Because even family can turn on you. So, especially when money's involved.
Yeah, you see so many examples of it. What do you guys think? Are there any upcoming fights? Like, are you going to watch Andy Ruiz, for instance, or will you watch the heavyweight title fight?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that fight.
You're excited for him?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a fight prediction? Can we get a fight prediction?
I think they're gonna go
the distance.
Yeah.
Oh, really? The 12 rounds. You have it going 12 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
You think Andy's going to pick it up again? Will he walk away the champion still?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Are you going to watch that one?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys, I know that Andy Ruiz has done some strength and conditioning with Andy in the past, right? With Andy Aguilar.
Yes, sir.
Interesting.
He told us he wanted to come back too.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I knew that he would want to come back because he said in his post-fight interview after he won that he wants to come back looking like AJ.
Right.
He said he wants to be muscle. He wants to surprise him. He wants to
Right.
surprise him and come back with muscles on top of muscles.
Yep.
Man, kind of like you got going on over here, man. What's happening?
I don't know, man.
You just working out?
The Canelo meat.
Canelo meat.
Just kidding.
Oh man. Ray Rodas joined. He says October 12th, La Cobra will be back. That's right. Pico Rivera Sports Arena. Ray Rodas of Red Boxing Promotions will feature La Cobra defending her GBO Continental title.
Yes.
You're excited? You seem excited.
No, I am excited.
That's what happens when you're ready.
Yeah, when you're ready, you're excited for it.
I'm excited.
And her
I'm just
knuckles are
waiting.
itching.
I always want to fight.
Always?
Always.
Always ready to go? That's why you started when you were 12? You always wanted to fight?
I was always fighting at home.
So they sent you to the gym and said, take it there? Take it there instead. Quit bringing your
No.
fights over here. Ray, we were talking earlier, and we want to get... La Cobra said she's willing to go to the Philippines if she can fight for the GBO world title. Right?
And if she takes me only.
Only if she takes you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
GBO world title. It's vacant, I think. I think it's vacant at that weight.
Super
Yeah, it's Superfly. Oh, man. What do you guys think? Before we sign off, I do want to give you an opportunity to send any shout-outs that you have to friends, family, to your gym, sponsors, etc., so forth and so on, and also tell us where we can follow you.
Well, you guys could follow me at Instagram under La Cobra Ruiz, La Cobra _Ruiz. I do have a Facebook, like a fan page under Adelaida Ruiz. Shout outs to Combat Sports Collective. Chef Tunes, my nutritionist. HDC Sports Apparel. HDC Sport. Boxing. My gym, which is Casillas Boxing Gym in Linwood. I forget a lot of things. South Central Boxing.
South Central Boxing.
That's one. Also, Eddie, another sponsor that I have. I forget. I'm so forgetful.
No problem.
I
couple
hope
things.
you guys don't get mad at me.
It's okay.
I
Ray
forgot
sent me a few things to throw out here, so I'll get that in. In attendance at Pico Rivera Sports Arena the night of October 12th, which is the night that you can see the undefeated prospect, La Cobra Ruiz, defending her GBO Continental title. In attendance will be Snoop Dogg, Ray J, Brandy, Princess Love, and Eddie Murphy. And they're looking for a Singaporean to fight you. So that would be someone from Singapore, I think.
I hope so.
Fire. It's going to be fire. It's going to be fire. So check it out. The celebrities will be out that evening at Pico Rivera Sports Arena. We very much look forward to it. And, Luis, where can we see your spectacular work?
You can find it at Al Mejia Photography on Instagram, Luis Mejia on Facebook. You can also find our, I guess, starter page. I mean, our page is starting out, but it's Combat Sports Collective on Instagram. And you can find Andy at the Fitzsmith. You can see us all there at UFC Gym Rosemead. And then, what else?
You guys got to make a list next time.
I know.
You guys are struggling. Wow.
I didn't think I was going to be on.
This is supposed to be the easy part of the interview.
Right?
No, you know what? Next time I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna when they tell me you want to give a shout out to someone, I think I'm gonna make a cheat sheet from now on, so I don't forget no one. Because then I'll be driving home. I'm like, oh man, I forgot this person. I forgot that person.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to a couple guys that are fighting up and coming pretty soon here. Panchito Cedevaca and
Absolutely.
He's going to be fighting Navarrete for the title. Also, Arnold Barbosa Jr. He's fighting also. Who else? Joette and Joe's fighting pretty soon as well. So, yeah, just some pretty exciting fights coming up.
Exciting fights all the way around. As always, I'm Sean Fitzgerald, your host. Thank you for joining me today, La Cobra Ruiz, Luis Mejia, and all of you. You can follow me at Beat the Count on Facebook, at Beat the Count on Instagram, and that's about it. It's easy for me because I'm still learning all the social media stuff, so I don't have any other ones. So it's really just the two. Shout out to Combat Sports Collective. Make sure to follow them on Instagram. Thank you very much. That's all I got for you. Peace.